Welcome, my name is Miles Tukshire, and this is the EMS Literature Update. Cardiac arrest, the quintessential medical emergency. The management of out-of-hospital cardiac arrest has been changing for many decades. In 1999, the arrest trial demonstrated that amiodarone was much more efficacious than placebo in achieving ROSC. And in 2002, the ALIVE trial finally supplanted lidocaine as the antiarrhythmic of choice in shock-resistant arrhythmias. While pre-hospitally, achieving ROSC is the desired outcome, the only meaningful goal is survival to hospital discharge neurologically intact. Are patients going to walk out of the hospital? If ALS interventions, such as amiodarone, achieve higher rates of ROSC, doesn't that mean our patients' outcomes will be better? Not quite. The ALPS trial, published in 2016, showed that neither amiodarone nor lidocaine was any more effective than placebo in treating shock-refractory ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation. We may very well see amiodarone and lidocaine placed further back on the hierarchy of treatment modalities. But at least we still have epinephrine, right? Well, perhaps not. Last month, the New England Journal of Medicine published the results of the long-awaited Paramedic 2 trial. It was a large-scale, multi-center, randomized, and double-blinded. All the words we love to hear from a study. It was conducted at 5 different EMS agencies in the United Kingdom, involving more than 8,000 patients with out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. So what did they do? Patients received either 1 milligram IV epinephrine or saline placebo along with standard care. The primary outcome was rate of survival at 30 days, and the secondary outcomes included a rate of survival to hospital discharge with favorable neurologic outcome, as indicated by a modified Rankin scale of 3 or less. So what did they find? At 30 days, 130 patients in the epinephrine group and 94 patients in the placebo group were alive. 36 patients surviving to 30 days is fantastic for epinephrine, but remember that modified Rankin scale I mentioned before? At the time of hospital discharge, severe neurologic impairment, a score of 4 or 5 on the modified Rankin scale, had occurred in more of the survivors in the epinephrine group than in the placebo group. So what does this mean? The authors concluded that in adults with out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, the use of epinephrine resulted in significantly higher 30-day survival than the use of placebo. But there was no significant between-group difference in the rate of favorable neurologic outcome because more survivors had severe neurologic impairment in the epinephrine group. Now, what are the strengths and limitations of this study? Not every study is perfect, and many are extremely flawed. However, that is beyond the scope of this episode. I'll leave a link to a podcast from Dr. Razai and Dr. Swaminathan of Rebel EM, who go into fantastic detail about the strengths and weaknesses of the Paramedic 2 trial. But suffice to say, I believe this is a very strong study that will get serious consideration from the American Heart Association and ILCOR during the 2020 ACLS revision. So what are the major takeaways from this trial? Well, it gives strong evidence to what many of us already thought. The vasoactive properties of epinephrine can cause widespread neurologic damage that is likely multifactorial. In cases such as cardiac arrest secondary to a massive MI, the strong alpha-1 effects that cause vasoconstriction also affect the coronary arteries, furthering ischemia and infarction to an already damaged heart. This leads to even worse cardiac output and thus perfusion to the brain. That is just one of the many effects that epinephrine can have that negatively impact neurologic function. So what does this mean for the primary and intermediate care paramedics? It means your role is proving more important than ever in making the difference for patients in out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. Quality CPR and early defibrillation are key. Do not let performing interventions such as intravenous cannulation take away from your optimal BLS care. The drugs that the ACP would provide will likely not be more effective than your contributions. What does this mean for the advanced care paramedic? Epinephrine is still indicated as per ACLS 2015, and that will not change until at least 2020. I believe epinephrine has its place in very specific situations and with slower dosing intervals. Consideration of H's and T's are paramount. ACLS allows for 3 to 5 minutes between epinephrine dosing. In cases where MI is suspected, it may be more beneficial to dose epinephrine every 5 minutes. Evidence continues to show that many ACLS interventions in out-of-hospital cardiac arrest are not beneficial. Renewed focus on quality BLS foundations should not be understated. And that's all for this episode of the EMS Literature Update. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I'll see you next time.